Welcome back for more instruction in drawing in two-point perspective. So the last assignment and what you should have uploaded by the end of today is your boxes, your 4 boxes that we drew in two-point perspective. And we're going to go ahead and get started with that. Today we're going to do more of a real life scenario and we're going to draw a building in two-point perspective. So for this draw along, go ahead and start with your horizon line, your 2 vanishing points, one on each end of the line. And then today we're going to have our vertical, we're going to draw it right in the middle of the page, and we're going to have the vertical be a nice big box essentially, and we're going to draw it straight over the top of our horizon line. So the goal today is just to kind of show you how you can take what you've learned with two-point perspective and get creative with it, and then also apply it into a real life scenario. So now I'm going to attach my line as I have learned how to do, because I've done this now already for one draw along. So I'm going to attach my lines, my orthogonal lines, on both sides of what will become my building. Remember that the overall height of your vertical is going to determine the height of the building. And then I'm going to cut off this building. So I'm going to make this building about this wide. I'm going to cut it off in space. Okay. And then I'm going to erase out my horizon line because I don't need it in the middle of my building. And then I'm going to erase out the orthogonal lines that I no longer need. Again, when you're drawing in perspective, it's super helpful to go ahead and get rid of any lines that you don't need. I am going to leave my horizon line right now in the background because who knows, I may use it. Like if I wanted to draw like a field and trees or something around my building, you know, if I wasn't going to add more buildings, then it might be helpful to kind of reference where that skyline would be, like where it would look like the sky and the land come together. So I'm just going to leave it for right now. So it's a very small little building, but I'm going to add a door into my building. And so again, in two-point perspective, it's super simple because you are only using 2 types of lines. You're using orthogonals and then you're using vertical lines. So to create a door, I want to make sure that I am parallel with my other verticals. And I'm just going to go ahead and create my line for my door. And then I'm going to, since this is on the right side of the paper, I'm going to use the right vanishing point. And I'm going to align my ruler with the right vanishing point to create the overall width of the door. And then I'm just going to use my vertical line again to cut my door off, like the overall thickness of my door. So now I have my door drawn on my building. And next I'm going to create a balcony. It's kind of like the same idea as using those stacked boxes that we used last time. I'm going to put my balcony up on top of my door. So I am going to start out, I'm just kind of figuring out where I would want it to be. I'm going to start out with the corner of my balcony. It's going to feel a little odd, but remember, I'm looking at the corner. So I'm going to start out with my corner being about right here for my balcony. Okay. Then I'm going to attach, just like I have done before, nothing super new here. I'm going to create the overall, like where my balcony ends. I'm going to create where that ends by attaching it on both the top and bottom of that line back to the right side vanishing point. Then I'm going to cut it off in space with a vertical. There we go. I'm going to do the same thing with the left side. I'm going to attach the top and bottom to the left side vanishing point. And I actually think I'm going to make it a little more shallow because I want it to look like more of a shallow balcony. So I'm going to do that for the top and the bottom of that corner. And again, the thickness of my pencil is not helping out, so let me try this again by placing my pencil first. There we go. That makes it a little more neat and clean. And then I'm going to chop it off wherever I want to chop it off using a vertical. Remember, if you're kind of losing your vertical angles, just align it with one that you already have as a vertical. Sometimes they can kind of look off a little bit because 2-point kind of like bends things a little bit, almost gives a little bit of that fisheye effect. So, I mean, I mapped out my balcony fairly well, and it's starting to look like a balcony. Like, it's starting to look like it's attached, but what we're missing is what plane. I want you to think for a minute about, like, what plane is missing for this box. Like, if this was the last exercise that you had just drawn, what plane would be missing? I'm just cleaning that up just a little bit. If you answered the bottom plane, you would be correct because remember, this is your eye level view. So you would be looking up at the bottom of that. And so in order to create that bottom view, I'm gonna have to do what I have been doing all along, where I'm crossing over. So basically what we did in our last exercise, I'm gonna cross over this way, and I don't have to go all the way to the vanishing point. And then I'm gonna connect that where the boundaries were for the box on the left side now to the vanishing point, and I'm going to cross over to determine. It's a very slight plane that I can see on the bottom. Let me make sure I got that right with the thickness of my pencil. I'm guessing it's off a little bit, and nope, I would be wrong. It's the smallest little angle there that you can see along the bottom. So I'm going to get rid of my orthogonal line. And that gives me a very shallow like balcony. So right now it doesn't look like a balcony. Remember, in perspective, we start out with like really simple basic shapes, and then we can add on to them or morph them. And in fact, I'm gonna go ahead and draw a doorway really quick to go out to the balcony. So I can do that by just drawing a line again. This line is gonna help me to determine how to like attach it to the vanishing point. Just like with the door, because it's on the right side of the drawing, I don't need to, you know what, and if you want to keep it like perfectly symmetrical, I'll just show you that really quick, because I know some people that really matters. You can just align it with the door that you've already drawn, and that will like make you more happy for those of you who like symmetry a lot. And I'm just going to attach the top line, the top part of the line to the vanishing point to get that doorway, to figure out that doorway. So let me go ahead and draw that. I can draw it as wide as I want to. Like maybe it's like a sliding door up there. And then I'm just going to use a vertical again. I mean, this should seem really familiar at this point. Verticals and orthogonals are really all we're using for this balcony, right? So now you can kind of see like the doorway, how it's starting to develop. And what I can do if I want now, I mean, shade in the bottom, I would recommend doing that for any lower planes because they're not going to receive as much light, and that will help make it look more 3D or three-dimensional. Keep it clean, not like I just did there. Keep it a little bit more clean than that. And then I can add in railings if I want to. So again, you know, you can freehand this, or you can use, you just want to stick with your angles. So make sure that your angles are correct and accurate. Like for each of your angles, you should be mirroring them or heading back to the vanishing point. And then from there, I can add in like, if I want to like freehand some like slats there up at the top. They're all vertical lines. So I can do that with the ruler. That of course would keep it more precise, or right now I'm just doing it freehand just to kind of give you the idea of how this would appear. Now for your doorway, if you're wondering about your doorway and like how you could maybe make a, for example, a hallway to go back inside your building, you could attach the left vanishing point to the bottom right of the doorway, and all of a sudden you have like a little hallway that you can go back in. This may look like something that Captain Mark did if you went through that tutorial. Again, if you didn't do that exercise, it actually was meant to be super helpful for you. So hopefully, you know, you have the chance to go back. You can shade in very quickly like where that doorway is. Try and avoid like a lot of scratchy marks because that will get really distracting. So you'll want to fill it in enough. You know, remember, perspective's super clean. So try to stay as neat and clean and perfectionistic with your drawing as you can. That's why you use a ruler, and that will help to add dimensionality to your drawing. Last, let's say that you wanted to put a sign on top of your building. And of course, by the way, you could add like the doors. This is where you can like add in your doors. Let me go back. I'm just kind of jumping around here to make it a little bit more decorative. You could add on to your upstairs, like you could add on to like your sliding doors to give some trim. You could add shutters on to the window as well by just working, again, I mean, it's so super simple because you're just working with verticals and orthogonals. So I'm just going to attach those really quickly, add in some of those. Oops, I need to attach the top and bottom though. Add in like the shutters. Remember that like if a shutter is if it's behind, then that would, like, if it's more toward the vanishing point, the same rules apply, that it would be smaller than if I put like a shutter on this side. I'm not really sure that it makes any sense to have a shutter on an upstairs, like, sliding doorway, but you know, I mean, maybe it does. I don't know. Maybe if you live in Italy or somewhere that's like, you know, if it wasn't the coronavirus and you got the chance to live in Italy. Somewhere kind of like exotic, but you would want to have your shutter that's up closer, looking bigger. I would probably adjust this just to make sure stylistically like it works. I would adjust that line and extend that shutter, make that shutter a little wider just so that it looks like it belongs and that they're the same kind of design or style. Again, this is just where you have an editing eye and you go, hey, that didn't look quite right, or you know, now it looks kind of weird, so I'm going to go back in and figure out what I did wrong and correct it. Okay, so the last thing is a sign, putting a sign on top of your building. So to put a sign on top of your building, you're just following the same rules. We're going to make it a little bit shorter, I think. Let's see, where do I want it to end? I'm going to start there. So whatever the overall height, that's where I'm going to start. I'm going to start with it about that tall coming off the top of the building. I'm going to use my orthogonal lines to figure out the overall thickness of the sign, and then I'm just going to cut it off in space using a vertical. There we go. I'll do something like that, and then we can see this side of it, right? So I would have to, because I can see that side plane, I would have to connect it back to my vanishing point. As long as it doesn't pass through something, I'm just going to give it a little bit of a lip there. And the same will be true here. I'll end up erasing some of that because it drops like in front of the building. But this way it will give that illusion that there's some thickness to the sign. I'm just going to erase where like the corner would come behind the top of the building. There we go. All right, we'll continue on with this in part 2. That will be on Monday for you. And then that will set you up for your final drawing for 2-point perspective. Hopefully you've had fun with this because it's a little bit easier way of drawing perspective. And we'll talk, like I said, a little bit more in our next video.